Ribeye. Cut from the rib section between the 6th and 12th ribs, the ribeye is defined by the heavy marbling that runs through the center eye of the steak. Those thin streaks of intramuscular fat slowly melt as the meat cooks, effectively basting it from the inside and creating a rich, juicy bite without needing much external fat or sauce. That is why ribeye is usually treated as the flavor-first steak. It is not always the most tender cut on the menu, but it delivers one of the deepest beef flavors you can get from a quick cooking steak. Ribeyes respond best to high heat, either on a grill or in a cast iron pan, where the outside can form a dark crust while the interior fat renders just enough to keep everything moist. New York strip. Also called strip steak or sirloin strip, this cut comes from the short loin just behind the ribs. Instead of heavy marbling throughout the muscle, the strip develops a fat cap along one side. That fat helps protect the meat during cooking and adds flavor without changing the interior texture too much. Compared to ribeye, the strip has a firmer chew and a more structured bite, but still carries that classic steakhouse taste, sitting between lean and fatty. It is often the default steak in American restaurants because it handles simple high-heat cooking extremely well. Filet mignon. Taken from the tenderloin of the cow, this cut comes from a muscle that barely does any physical work during its lifetime. Because it is not heavily used, the muscle fibers remain extremely fine, which is why filet mignon is known as the most tender steak available. The trade-off is flavor. Since the tenderloin contains very little fat or connective tissue, filet tends to have a milder, almost buttery texture rather than the bold beefiness found in fattier cuts. It is usually served thick and cooked quickly over high heat to avoid drying out. T-bone. This is essentially two steaks in one separated by a T-shaped bone. On one side of the bone sits a portion of strip steak, while the other side contains a smaller piece of tenderloin. That combination gives you two textures in a single cut, firm and beefy on one side, and soft and delicate on the other. The bone itself plays a role during cooking by helping retain heat and slow moisture loss, which can slightly improve the final texture. T-bones are typically grilled or broiled, then sliced off the bone after resting and plated together. Porterhouse. Structurally similar to the T-bone, but cut further back along the short loin, where the tenderloin portion becomes much larger. In practical terms, that means you are getting a full strip steak and a substantial piece of filet mignon attached to the same bone. Porterhouses are often large enough to serve multiple people and are designed to be carved after cooking, rather than eaten whole by one person. In Italy, this cut appears as bistecca alla fiorentina, traditionally cooked rare, over extremely hot coals, and sliced before serving. Sirloin. Cut from behind the short loin near the hip where muscles do more physical work. That extra movement results in leaner meat with slightly tougher muscle fibers, which gives sirloin a firmer bite than premium steakhouse cuts like ribeye or strip. It is still flavorful, but it lacks the heavy marbling that produces a melt-in-your-mouth texture. Because of that balance between cost and flavor, sirloin is often treated as an everyday steak that works in a wide range of cooking methods, from grilling and pan-searing to slicing for kebabs or stir-fry. Flat iron. Taken from the shoulder, also known as the chuck, this cut is created by removing a tough central seam of connective tissue from the top blade muscle. What is left behind is a flat, evenly shaped steak that is surprisingly tender for a working muscle group. Flat iron steaks have good marbling and a strong beef flavor, and their uniform thickness helps them cook evenly across a hot surface. They are often recommended as a value alternative to more expensive steakhouse cuts, because they deliver a similar eating experience at a lower price point. Flank steak is a long, flat cut from the abdominal area, with very visible muscle fibers running in one direction. It is lean and intensely beefy, but it can become tough if cooked beyond medium. Flank responds well to marinades, and to high heat, fast cooking methods like grilling or pan-searing. The most important step happens after cooking. Slice thinly against the grain so those long fibers become short enough to chew easily. It is commonly used in dishes like fajitas, salads, and stir-fries. Skirt steak. Also taken from the belly region, from the plate section, skirt steak has a looser grain structure than flank. That open texture allows it to absorb marinades quickly and to develop strong surface browning when cooked over very high heat. It's known for an intense beef flavor and a chewy texture when served rare to medium rare. Overcooking skirt steak causes it to become tough very quickly, which is why it is traditionally cooked hot and fast, then rested and sliced. Hanger steak. A single cut that literally hangs from the diaphragm between the rib and loin. Because there's only one per animal, hanger steak was historically kept by butchers rather than sold commercially. It has a soft texture and a deep, minerally flavor that some people compare to liver. After trimming a tough central membrane, hanger steak is usually marinated and cooked quickly over high heat, then served medium rare and sliced across the grain. Chuck eye. Taken from the chuck, near the rib section, this cut shares some characteristics with rib eye, but it comes from the shoulder instead. It often has good marbling and a strong flavor, but it includes slightly more connective tissue than premium steakhouse cuts. Chuck eye benefits from gentler cooking methods, such as reverse searing or medium heat grilling, which help break down that extra connective tissue. Tomahawk. Essentially a ribeye left attached to an extra long rib bone that has been Frenched for presentation. It contains the same marbling and flavor as a standard ribeye, but it is cut much thicker and served with a dramatic bone-in appearance. Because of its thickness, tomahawk steaks are often seared first to develop a crust, and then finished indirectly or in the oven so the exterior does not burn before the interior reaches the desired temperature. Tri-tip is a triangular cut from the bottom sirloin, with a mix of lean meat and a fat cap along one side. It is known for a roasty flavor and is closely associated with California's Santa Maria barbecue tradition, where it is seasoned simply and grilled over a wood fire. Tri-tip is usually cooked whole, like a small roast, and then carved into thin slices across the grain for serving. Bavette, also called flap steak, comes from the lower sirloin and has a loose grain structure that is often compared to a cross between flank and skirt steak. That open grain gives bavette its strong beef flavor and helps it absorb marinades more effectively than tighter cuts. When cooked to medium rare over high heat, the fat within the muscle softens without completely melting away, which keeps the texture juicy while still maintaining a slight chew. Bavette is popular in French bistro cooking and frequently appears in steak frites dishes, where it is seared hard in a pan to develop a crust, rested to allow the juices to redistribute, and then sliced into strips across the grain before serving. Rump steak. Taken from the back leg of the cow, this cut comes from a muscle group that sees a lot of physical use during the cow's life. That extra work produces leaner meat with less marbling, which is why rump steak tends to be firmer and slightly tougher than premium steakhouse cuts like ribeye or strip. Despite that, it still carries plenty of beef flavor when handled correctly. Rump steak is often marinated before cooking to help relax the muscle fibers, then grilled or pan-seared to medium and sliced thinly against the grain afterward. Picanha, also known as the top sirloin cap, comes from the upper portion of the rump. It is recognizable by the thick fat cap along one side of the meat. Unlike heavily marbled steaks, most of picanha's fat sits on the outside, where it slowly renders during cooking and helps baste the lean interior. It is especially popular in Brazilian churrasco, where it is cut into thick strips skewered with the fat facing outward and grilled over an open flame. From ribeye marbling to sirloin structure, steak is defined by muscle, fat, and how each cut responds to heat and technique. Let us know in the comments what we should cover next. Thanks for watching.